This section is a 10.3a Introduction to Completing the Square, and it's a very short section, very simple. We can start with the 5-minute check. Do you remember how to solve an equation like this? We would, of course, add 5 to both sides. And then to undo x squared, we would take the square root of both sides, so we would get x equals 4. But you also need to remember that negative 4 times negative 4 will also give you 16. So we need to make sure we include positive 4 and negative 4. Every time you take the square root of a number, you should get 2 solutions. Okay? The other skill that we will use today is remembering how to factor a set of perfect squares. If the first term is a perfect square and the last term is a perfect square, remember that we can write it like this. Take the square root of the x squared and we get x. Take the square root of 16 and we get 4. Bring down the sign of the middle term and we get x minus 4, the quantity squared. Both of those skills will help us win this section. Some of the things that you want to remember when you're solving an equation. Number 1, you want to make sure you take the square root of both sides. And when you do that, you get 2 answers. Positive 4, negative 4, like we did here. The second thing you want to make sure you do is always solve for x, and put it in set notation, okay? And kind of the don't forget is, again, that you're getting 2 answers every time, or we're trying to at least. So we start very simple. We get x squared equals 49. You take the square root of both sides, and we get x equals 7 and negative 7. Number 2 is the first time we're going to use it with a perfect square. So just like we could take the square root of this x squared to get rid of that square, we can actually take the square root of this side to get rid of this square. So if I take the square root of this side, the square and the square root cancel, and we're left with just x plus 6. And I would suggest you drop out the parentheses so you don't get confused. Don't forget to take the square root of the other side, so we get 8 and negative 8. Now we have to solve for x. So we need to make sure we subtract 6 from here, but since we have 2 possible solutions over here, we have to subtract 6 from each of those possibilities as well. So we get x, and 8 minus 6 gives us 2 for that solution, and negative 8 minus 6 gives us negative 14 for that solution. So usually when you're dealing with a perfect square like this, a perfect square, you're going to get 2 answers, but they're going to be very different. The only time they will come out to be the same is if it's just an x squared with nothing inside the parentheses. So be careful with that. You will get different answers each time. They won't be the same. And then the last two, number 3 and number 4, we continue to do the same thing. We take the square root here on this side and the square root of this side. The square and the square root cancel. We get x minus 4 equals the square root of 25, which is going to be 5 and negative 5. We have to solve for x, so we add 4, and we get x such that x equals 5 plus 4, which is 9, negative 5 plus 4, which is negative 1. 2 totally different answers, just like we did in number 2. And number 4, why don't you pause this, give that a chance, try to do that one on your own, and then come back and check it. Okay, so we're going to take the square root of both sides. The square and the square root cancel, as they have in each problem. Square root of 16 is 4 and negative 4. Now, we're still solving for x, but this time it takes 2 steps. So we undo addition and subtraction first by adding 4 to the left side and both answers on the right side. We get 2x. These drop out. We get 4 plus 4 is 8, and negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Again, 2 totally different answers, but notice we have not solved for x yet. We still need to get x alone, so we have to divide by 2. And again, we have to make sure we divide both of these solutions by 2. 8 divided by 2 is, of course, 4, and 0 divided by 2 is 0. One thing I do want to mention if you were to take the square root of a negative number, if you try to take the square root of a negative number, say negative 15, and you put that in your calculator, it will tell you error because we cannot take the square root of a negative number. So if you're working through a problem, you take the square root of a negative, for some reason this number over here is negative, and that happens, then the answer is no solution.